Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another session with Chatting with Wisdom. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rollie Allaire. Gigudo Migunkwe is my spirit name, which means Talking Feather Woman, and I am your host for Chatting with Wisdom. So Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series featuring amazing women. There are different ways that women are amazing, and we're going to celebrate that. And so I also want to invite you to my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. You can also find a similar group on Telegram that I have been using this year to share positivity. And today I would like to welcome Emily Shaules. She is a transformational coach, author, and speaker who works primarily with women with invisible illness. A former attorney, actor, and energy bar CEO, Emily helps her clients feel better in their minds, bodies, and using the techniques that helped her own quest for healing. She also guides them in designing a life that truly works for their unique situation instead of trying to force them to keep with an out of balance society. So we're going to be talking about shifting yourself from invisible illness. And just before we got started, I was sharing with Emily that today here in Canada, we have annually what's called Bell Let's Talk Day. And I wasn't paying attention to the dates of all the things that were going on. And I always am fascinated with how the universe puts things in our path that just reminds us of that we are completely interconnected. So Emily they don't have a Bell Let's Talk Day in the US that she's aware of. And so really interestingly that she chose today to be able to sign up so that she can have this conversation and be part of this chat. And so just incredible. I love the way that it works. So welcome, Emily. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Rollie.
So tell me a little bit more about this invisible illness that you've had to experience.
Sure. I classify when people ask me, like, what's invisible illness, I usually describe it as any chronic physical or mental condition where you've heard the phrase, oh, but you look normal. Someone who just is going through their regular day, they're doing all of the things that normal people are doing, but underneath that, there is a level of pain that people just aren't aware of. And it just adds this extra layer of difficulty and challenge into their lives. My own journey with invisible illness started when I was in college. I was a senior in college. I was applying and getting accepted to law schools. It was very, exciting but stressful time in my life. And I ended up having really bad digestive issues and ended up having my gallbladder removed. And so I was 22. I mean, that was like not in the plan of like having an organ removed in my 20s. And I didn't get better. And so they kept doing tests, and I was ultimately diagnosed with irritable bowel disease and ulcerative colitis. And so at that time, I just kind of did whatever the doctor said to do. They put me on a bunch of meds. I went to law school. So, put my head down for 3 years, no stress there, and did law school. And then the week after I graduated from law school, I flipped my hair out of my face, and something in my neck snapped. And I went to the emergency room, and they said, oh, it's just a pulled muscle. Here's some Vicodin. You'll be fine in a week. And I wasn't. It started this journey with fibromyalgia, which is chronic pain 24/7. So the pain just kind of, diffused and went everywhere. And within a couple of years, I mean, by the time I was 30, I was on about 25 pills a day. And it was just, you take one pill to deal with one symptom, and then 6 months later and you'd have side effects from the pill, and so they'd put you on another pill, and it just started this cascade of illness that really, to this day I still feel effects of. I'm now med free. Like, I don't take any pharmaceuticals because that's just not what I believe in, but the amount of healing that I've had mentally, spiritually, physically, I'm light years away from where I was there. So I never, when I talk to people, who are interested in working with me, I never claim like, oh yeah, work with me and all of your pain will go away. I mean, I wish that would be lovely. I'd also, be a billionaire, but it's but to have the separation between your joy and your pain, to not have to wait to be out of pain in order to enjoy your life and have a fulfilling life that you love and that you look forward to, that is life changing, and that in and of itself is priceless.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. It is really incredible when we see how we're able to pull these things together. And congratulations on being medication free. I am a strong advocate on medications if they're needed,
Absolutely.
and there's lots of times when they are needed. But I too am medication free for a number of years, and so it is. And I love being able to use holistic approaches and finding some natural ways of being able to deal with my anxiety and depression.
Definitely.
And so I was sharing with you just before coming on as well, is that ironically, 7 years ago, a memory came up on Facebook that reminded me that 7 years ago today is when I started using gratitude. And so I would use this with my clients all the time, encourage them to use it, and I would use it as well. But that was what actually pulled me out of that darkness, was using that one particular strategy of dealing with my mental health and bringing back my anxiety and reducing my anxiety and depression and pulling myself out of that. And so, and again, it's those people that see that invisible illness of, okay, well, but you look fine. Everything looks good. You're smiling. And there are so many people in the world that are smiling that are not okay right now.
Yeah.
And so, and whether that is from mental health, whether from a physical condition, whatever it is that's going on. And when we have a physical condition, there is also mental health that's attached.
Absolutely.
Because like that goes hand in hand. And so it's just incredible of how we can try and find different ways when we can find the right tools, find the right resources. And sometimes it's a lot of trial and error before we get there, right?
Absolutely. I have a group coaching program that I run for women with invisible illness, and I created it because I've been now in this world of, natural, alternative, holistic health for almost 15 years. And I've tried everything. That's my personality. I want to experiment. I want to try everything that I hear just to see if it works for me, if it works for others. And so I really wanted to reduce the time that it took for people to heal. I don't want other women to have to go through like a 15-year journey. And so I really curated the things that have really worked for me, and that I know that have really worked for other people, because what works for me might not work for you.
Yeah.
But I basically have a buffet of all of these wonderful tools that have really impacted my life, and offer them to people to try in their own way to see, does this fit? Does this not? Should I leave this? Should I, but to have someone guiding you in that process, because now, especially with the internet, my God, it's like you go on and you type in chronic pain or something. I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole that could last 15 years. And so I wanted to make that process more efficient and more enjoyable, and also to have a support system along the way, because that's the biggest thing. I work with people one-on-one as a coach, and I still do, but I really love working in a group the most, because even if you have the most supportive family, the most loving spouse, great friends, if they themselves are not dealing with invisible illness or chronic pain, it's almost impossible for them to truly empathize and know what you're going through.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can be in a group with other women who maybe they don't have the same invisible illness as you do, but they get it. They understand the struggles that you're going through. Just that alone is such a healing gift, to be in the presence of women who understand you. And so regardless of what healing tool you use or what philosophy you go by, just finding people who understand and who support you is huge, because it's really easy to feel alone in this journey. And that's, I think, the scariest part of it, is when you feel like I'm alone, I'm the only one going through this, and no one else understands.
And absolutely. And so anybody who works with me knows that I am a strong advocate of my group programs. I still do the one-to-one services as well, but I do more group services for that exact reason, because people have that opportunity to connect with each other and share resources and share support and have that connection with each other. And I love seeing and watching these relationships grow and build to becoming some of the people that have been in my programs have become very best friends with people who are in the group, right? So it's absolutely incredible to be able to watch that journey as well.
And also when obviously there are just days when you're having a bad day, when you're just not up to, you've got a coaching session scheduled, or you've got a class or something like that, and you're just like, you're in bed, you're like done. To be able to just be a part of something and listen while other women are talking and sharing, that can be a healing experience. Because I find, like you were mentioning before, the universe always knows. The universe is always kind of pulling the strings in the background. And so I'll find this, in my own journey, when I'm listening to a teacher, they might be answering someone else's question, but the answer is hitting me like exactly what I needed. Even if it's a completely different topic, they'll say something and it'll be like, oh, that's where I got my
light bulb.
Thank you. That was worth it. And I didn't even have to ask the question. I didn't even have to necessarily, be participating. I could just be listening and being held in that sacred space. There's just something when a group of women get together that is just unlike anything else. It's just, it's wonderful. And I don't think there's enough of it. I think, unfortunately, today in our society, we're taught very much to be independent, and there is no more a village anymore. It takes a village to raise a child or a family. There's no village anymore. It's basically just very isolated individual households. And a lot of times you're dealing with single parents, you're dealing with just individuals who are expected to do all of the adulting, when that was never really how it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be, husbands, wives, neighbors, extended family, all helping together, and we've lost that. And so anywhere someone can get that kind of support, I'm like, go for it, because it fills a need that you don't even know you had until you get it.
And it really is. So like I have a lot of people because a lot of times I deal with people that have anxiety. And so a lot of times people are like, yeah, well, my anxiety is too bad. And dealing with people isn't my thing. And one of the things that I always, so when sometimes it takes a long time and sometimes they never join the group stuff, but when they do, it's like, oh my God, I didn't know what I was missing. I didn't realize how alone I'm not. And so, and it's really incredible. And so one of the things so I've been doing this for a number of years. And so I'm into my 21st year of working with people. And so one of the things that I have noticed in probably about the last 5 years is that I'm seeing so much more of that group dynamic happening, and that group cohesion and people coming together in group, as opposed to where it was like very much isolated. And so here in Canada, our funding comes from different sources because it's covered under our healthcare for the most part. There's some private, but all focused on being able to like everything's all streamlined, everybody's siloed. And so if you're working for this agency, you're not allowed to deal with this issue, because even though you're dealing with this issue, then you have to then take it to that department, and that department needs to do it because that is funded by them. And that was one of the things that I really struggled with being in. And so I broke a lot of rules because it was like, okay, so if I'm working with somebody with addiction, now different if that wasn't my, if I didn't have those skills, but like I worked in mental health and addiction. And I worked domestic violence. And so like I had the skill set to be able to work with a number of different people. And so I would often still work with them and just kind of like keep it on the down low, simply because like having somebody go from person to person to person to person to be able to deal with the same issue is redundant, and that's not helpful. And then you get different skills and different strategies, and like then the people are trying to like figure out how to be able to make all of these things work. So it was like having them work with one person made things a lot easier. And so, which is one of the reasons why a holistic approach for me is the easiest. And not that I don't so like I don't do yoga, for example, but yoga is one of those things that I'm really strongly encouraged. So then I have some people that I can actually refer to that are very similar to, in terms of mindset and the way that I do things, that I can actually refer them to and things like that. Right. So, because you still want them to go with the experts. Like you definitely don't want me teaching you yoga.
Of course.
Right. So,
but yeah, it's the difference between going wide and going deep. And I think, we have this, Instagram or social media culture where it's how many followers can I get? How many, what are the numbers that I can get? Well, that's great. If, you have 2 million followers, how deep can you go with each one of those followers? That's a different conversation. And I read a quote recently, and it said, we've been taught that the most important relationship is the romantic. It's like the person, the one that you're looking for. And that's really misleading. That the most important relationship that we came here, besides the one with yourself, I think absolutely number one should always be the relationship between you and your higher being, whatever you call that. But that the most important relationship is between you and your community. And having a really strong support system is just, it's what's going to get us out of all of these messes that humans have gotten ourselves into, like until we really start coming together and seeing each other as fellow extensions of the divine, not our enemy, our brothers and sisters, we're not going to pull us out of what's going on in terms of climate change, wealth inequality, invisible illness, all of these things. Because what I tell women who have invisible illness, the name of my the group coaching program, I named it Canary Club, because I think of us as the canaries in the coal mine. We're the ones who maybe we were born into bodies that were a little more sensitive than the average bear, but we are the ones who are reacting to this 24/7 hustle culture, this work 80 hours a week, this do it all by yourself. And our bodies are saying, no, like it's not happening. And there are those who can get through it and can survive. But even if they're not in pain doing it, I know they're at their happiest and most fulfilled, because that's not what we came to do. We did not come to this planet to work our butts off and pay bills and die. Like that's not what we can do. We can
really
and have joy and connect with one another and realize our own divinity and play. And so to be the ones that are reclaiming our sensitivity as a good thing. For so many years, I judged myself and my body as like, why can't I do these things that all of these other people are doing? Why am I so sensitive? And it's like, no, when I really tapped into like the sensitivity is an innate gift that I have that not many other people, that not everyone else has, then I was able to have the gratitude, see the benefits of it, of
Yeah.
how easily I can find compassion for someone, of how easily I can empathize with someone, of how I can, do all of these different things that maybe someone else can't. And so I think that reframing is really important to be open to connecting with that group and seeing that as a really good thing, not a stressor, not an extra stressor that's going to be added on to us. It's actually going to relieve some of the stress that we're dealing with when we're all by ourselves.
Yeah. And it really does make a difference in terms of that connection. And I love the name of it, right? So it's a beautiful name. So Canary Club. And so like it's like all these little chatters that you actually get to have. And so I just put it in in the comments on this live stream of the link for you to be able to have access to the Canary Club. And so the other thing that you have is that you also do an online retreat called Shift Yourself Retreat. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we're actually in the process of turning it into an online program that people can do in their own time, and they can own it forever and do it over and over and over again, because we had such great results doing it live. But we are having, I think a lot of people are zoomed out these days, and we were doing it live for so long, and it was getting to the point where, because for me to cover everything that I wanted to cover in it, it's really the foundation, like of everything that I teach. I needed 5-7 days, and to ask people to take that out of their schedule in 1 week. I didn't want to have to do that. So we're actually right now recording and doing all of that so that people can have it online and do it at their own pace and go back and revisit things. And yeah, for me, I named it Shift Yourself because I think a lot of us were waiting for the big quantum leap. We're waiting to wake up one day and feel completely 100% healthy, or we're waiting to wake up and there's $1 million in our bank account, or we meet the love of our life, or and quantum leaps exist. I mean, I don't want to say they don't, but when you're expecting those, when you're waiting for them, and you're kind of putting your life on hold until those things show up, that's not you're kind of keeping yourself stuck. Whereas if you take little bitty shifts and you add those up over time, those completely change the trajectory of your life. Like your gratitude list. That's something, that's one of the things I teach in my program is to do that. And I have a big jar and I have little strips of paper next to my bed. And I just, every night before I go to bed, I write something that happened that day that was magical to me or made me smile. And at the end of the year, I go through and I read them. And something like that, someone might say, well, I'm in pain 24/7. Like, that's not going to help me. Well, that alone is not going to completely help you. But that plus other little bitty things that you do throughout the day, suddenly now you're changing the trending, you're changing the direction of where your focus is. You're no longer focused on all the things that are going wrong. You're starting to focus on what's going right. And what you focus on grows, but it takes time. It's like trying to, one of my favorite teachers is Abraham Hicks. And, they talk about the analogy of, if you've got a train going 150 miles an hour in this direction, like you're not going to stop it on a dime and suddenly have it go 150 miles an hour in the opposite direction. Like you're going to have to slow it down and then turn it around and then go the other direction. And so little things can do that, can create that change in trajectory if you give yourself the time and the patience and the trust that it will work.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I love. Like I have a program called Soulful Life Hacks that only opens up quarterly. And I do that specifically so that people can like really bond with each other before we throw in somebody else. And so one of the things that we do at the beginning of when we open it up at the beginning of the season is we check in to say, okay, well, what do you want this next 3 months to look like? What do you want these next, like, what do you want the focus to be? Where do you want to see yourself in these like roughly 90 days? And so, and by the time that we actually get to the end, it's like, okay, where were you? Like, or where are you now? And so we do that comparison. And so because we've had a number of seasons, we've been over a year and a half doing this program now. And so what's really interesting is to be able to see where people have actually been a year and a half ago. And so it's just fascinating to be able to see. And like nobody, like you said, nobody had those quantum leaps of, and not to say that anybody didn't have those big wins, because there were some really big wins, but like it was all based on like all these changes and these little things that we actually have to do to be able to shift the way that we look at things. Even something as simple, and it's not simple. So setting boundaries are not simple. So I don't want to make it sound like it's simple, but it's one of those, like, once we can actually get that figured out, is that it makes a huge difference in terms of like how things shift. And it doesn't mean that our boundaries never get fallen back over again. We have to rebuild them back up again. It's like a fence in a farmer's field. Like they build the fence and it's not there forever. They do have to go back and fix it and restructure it. And the animals are pushing it over and all those other things. But it's just really important for us to be able to have those abilities and those skills and those little things that make a difference. And like you said, that gratitude isn't going to change the world. However, when we actually start to feel into that gratitude and find that one thing that can actually pull ourselves out of whatever it is, because there's at least one thing in the day, no matter how much pain that you've been in or how much sorrow that you've been in, there's still one thing in the day that you can actually find solace in. And it's really incredible to be able to have that. And I love the jar idea. And I keep thinking I'm going to do that every year when January 1st rolls around. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. But then I never do. Because like having that visual of seeing it in the jar, I think is probably exuberating.
It's
And
awesome.
so,
Yeah. I take the week between Christmas and New Year's and I just read them, and it's like, you can, and then I remember all of these things that I forgot throughout the year, just like little things. And it really does create this feeling of, life is good. There is goodness in the world, because the things that we're talking about, it's the difference between like a diet and a lifestyle change. Like I'm not talking about things that you're going to do for 6 months and then you're done and then you'll move on. This is really transforming how you live in a holistic way, to become the happiest, most aligned version of yourself. And the example I always say is myself. Forget all the invisible illness. When I was in 8th grade, we did a yearbook poll, at the end of the year, of like best dressed and most popular and like all those things. And I was voted most pessimistic.
okay.
Like, I mean, I don't even think many people like knew what pessimistic meant at that point, but that's what I was voted as. And so this is not something like, I am not I was not born a naturally like happy, like look at the good kind of person. This is something that I have consciously worked at. And there was a tipping point where it, in the beginning, maybe it kind of feels like you're faking it till you make it, but there is that point when now suddenly you do look at the world as more opportunity than heartache. You do look at the world as more good than bad. You're more looking forward to things than fearful of what's coming next. And it happens over time. But once you hit that point, like that is, oh my God, that's the big excitement. That's, it's not like having a new car in the driveway. It's that feeling is what we're really going for. And when you get that, it's just, like I said before, it's priceless. Like it is. It's everything.
And it really is. And it's like it's those light bulb moments that happen. And so, and like, I love, like I said, I love the idea. And every year in January, I'm like, I'm going to start that. But it's that being able to actually have that opportunity. And so I use journaling a lot, and I encourage people to use journaling a lot. and not so that they can go back and dredge up like all the negatives of whatever it is that's going on, but so that they can see where they've been to where they are now, because it really does make a difference. So it's like, don't go back and read your journal so that you can like sink back into whatever it is that's going on, but like find out where it is that you are. Like, what is it that looks different now than it does then?
I'm a
And
huge proponent of celebrating little wins, because we're waiting to celebrate these huge wins, which, oh my God, yes, celebrate them when they come. But really, there are always small wins. And usually we just kind of breeze by them. It's like, oh yeah, that's nice, but I'm still not to where I want to be.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's how you get to where you want to be, is by really celebrating, focusing on milking those like small moments. Cause like I said before, what you focus on grows. And so you really need to start focusing on the goodness, even if it's just a speck during your day, because if not, then you, by default, humans are problem-solving beings. If you just leave us to our own devices and we're just kind of living by default, we are going to focus on the problems.
Yep.
It's just how it is. And that's why, especially people with invisible illness, it's like every year something else goes wrong. And it's because whatever you focus on grows. It's going to keep going in that direction unless you consciously make an effort to switch it and go the opposite direction.
And like you said, I really like one of the things that you said is that like every year something else goes wrong. And it doesn't mean like, so people who have degenerative illnesses doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to degenerate, right? So fibromyalgia is not the, okay, well, there's like this magic pill or this magic surgery or this, it's just, it continues to deteriorate. Same as osteoarthritis or like things like diabetes, potentially, depending on what type of diabetes that you have, potentially can be reversed. There's lots of different things like that, but there's a lot of degenerative things that we have going on in life. And so it doesn't mean that you're not going to be, that you're going to be able to sprint a marathon in 2 years from now because you stayed positive or that you focused on all the good things in your life. It is degenerative. It is going to get worse, and not in the sense of like, but you don't have to be stuck in that despair. You can still have some really great things. I have a friend who was diagnosed with MS like years ago, and so now is in a walker, can't walk anymore at all. And initially it was just like but it was degenerative. And so, and when she first started, she was somebody that went all the time. She didn't stop. And so, but if you actually talk to her, she is the most happiest person on the planet. And so, because her outlook is always positive, and it doesn't matter that her body continues to deteriorate, because it will, because that's what's supposed to happen. She does things to try and slow it down as best as she can with medication and with natural holistic approaches. But at the same time, she still is able to still find the beauty in all of those things. So getting excited that her grandchild has come over to help clean the house, getting super excited that I don't know, like whatever, right? Yeah. So, but it's just those different things. And so I really liked how you said that, because we don't have to be stuck in the despair of whatever it is that's going on, but finding those little things that that we have to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And I do know, I mean, I never want people to blame themselves for what's going on in their bodies, but I do know there are miraculous stories of healing. There are spontaneous remissions. Like if you look into the work of like Dr. Joe Dispenza and things like that, there are the possibilities of people getting better, even with degenerative things. Even, I mean, the own changes in my own body, whereas conventional medicine would say I should be worse today than I was 15 years ago. I'm better today. And am I completely healed? No, but I do know of people who have completely healed of certain things. So that's where kind of the mystery of life comes in. Do I believe that one day I will be pain-free? Yes. Do I know that for certain? No. But I'm going to live as if that is where I'm heading.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing of being able to leave open that possibility, because so many of us, it's like, I'm going to be in pain the rest of my life. This is only going to get worse and worse. And that just takes you into a really dark place. And also to really kind of get out of the future tripping, to really be in the present moment, because you can only truly be grateful for what's going on in the present moment. Like we can't be living in the past or living in the future and be 100% present for what's going on. And in the now, that is where all of the magic does happen. That's like, when you see a beautiful bird come by and stuff like that, if you're focused on what's going on, back then or 10 years from now, you're going to miss that. And then you've missed that magical moment that the universe is trying to give to you, to give you some joy in this moment.
Yes.
And so that presence, but presence with hope. It's that being satisfied where you are, but eager to see what's coming down the road. And that really just goes back to faith. I really consider the word faith, whatever that is, whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
Faith to me is not a noun. Faith is a verb. That is something you have to work at every single day, to have faith that you are loved, that God, the universe, source wants only what's best for you, that good things are going to come to you. In our world, that takes a Herculean effort at times.
It does.
That's the difference between a happy life and a sad life, is that faith. So that's what to cultivate. And then the physical, the mental, all of that healing follows that work. That's the foundation that you have to lay down before anything can change. And we usually do the opposite. We're so focused on action of like, what doctor can I see? What medicine can I take? What can I do? All of these things. What food should I be eating? What food should I not be eating? Like but when you focus on that foundation first, then the other things, you now suddenly have leverage. Now suddenly suddenly someone tells you about this one wonderful thing that actually works for you, or you meet the perfect doctor, or you do all of this. Like, you don't have to try so hard in that efforting when you're coming from a place of things are working out for me, and I'm going to follow, trusting and having faith that I'm going to be okay.
Yes. And it really does make all the difference in the world when we can actually have that faith. And like you said, whatever it is that looks like for people. And so just being able to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel when we are stuck in that barrel of of darkness. And so and we all go in there. And so like there's all different times that things have happened. We've lost loved ones, different opportunities we've lost, certain circumstances in our life. So there's lots of things that get us there, but we don't have to stay stuck in there. We actually can pull ourselves out. And it's okay for us to be in that space for a short time, but not for us to stay there. And so the more that we stay there, the more challenging it is to be able to pull ourselves out. And so just being able to find those resources, but knowing that there is something, there is goodness, there is something that we can actually move towards, makes a huge difference in terms of that conversation. And I shared with you at the beginning that typically we're 30 minutes, but depending on the topic. And so of course, this topic is pretty intense because it is something that affects so many people. And like I said, the universe had a plan that it was going to come into light today, with it being the Let's Talk Day, because it really is about being able to share. And so like in some cases, it's that physical illness that is invisible to others, or it is or the mental health. So Bell Let's Talk Day is about the mental health and about being able to reduce the discrimination. And so one of the things that I think is really important for people to be able to remember is that when you see somebody, you have no idea what their story is. And so be kind. And I know that some days that and like everyone else, that there are some days that it's like, I'm frustrated and it's like, you're in my way and I want to be able to get something done. But just remember to be kind, because you really don't know what it is that's going on. And even though somebody's smiling, doesn't mean that they don't have something happening. And
Absolutely.
that
Giving
is,
people and yourself the benefit of the doubt. That's like the biggest, that compassion for yourself. When you truly give yourself a break, then it's a lot easier to give other people a break.
yeah. And
That's
it really,
that's the biggest thing.
yeah, and it really does make that difference. And so so I do want to leave people with that. Is there anything else, Emily, that you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on?
Oh, I mean, I could talk to you forever. No, really, I love, like you said, how the universe kind of put this together on this day, with this topic. And I just want to say, for anyone listening who is struggling, it can get better. And you just need to know that, and need to know that people are supporting you, even if you can't feel it right now. Like, they're there for you. And so you are loved and you are cherished, and things can get better.
Beautiful. So that's a beautiful way to end today. And so, again, I want to, hey, Kelly. And so, again, I want to be able to thank everybody for joining us for today. And if you are catching this on the replay, either on Facebook, YouTube, or even in the podcast, so it will be up on podcasting over the next day or two as Robin gets everything ready to go. And so just thankful for everybody to be here. So thanks again, Emily. Would love to be able to continue to have more conversations with you. So so definitely love to be able to stay connected and chat with everybody soon. And bye for now, everyone.